Here is another comment. 7+ years on a whole food, plant-based diet, following the usual channels. I guess he means YouTube channels. My blood sugar was always high. So he's like, I did this 7 years. Well, that's persisting in something that obviously doesn't really work very well. Blood sugar was always high. At the age of 58, I'm extremely muscular and fit. He says brown rice and quinoa and whole grains and fruits and beans was for me another path to diabetes failure. Now, I want you to listen to this. I mean, he seems to be doing everything right. He's fit. He's muscular. He obviously exercises and lifts weights or does push-ups or whatever he does. And what does he eat? Things like brown rice and quinoa and fruit and beans. He doesn't say Snicker bars and ice cream and ding-dongs and Trix cereal and Cocoa Puffs. He says quinoa, brown rice, whole grains, fruits, beans. He says it was a path to diabetes. Now, I believe strongly that we should eat healthier foods over the non-healthy. So if you give me a choice between eating a bowl of beans versus eating some Cocoa Puff cereal, I'll go for the beans every time. But there are better choices still, especially when you're trying to get your blood sugar down initially. After you get down into the 5s and you've kind of landed where you wanted to land, then you may want to experiment and see how can beans work with me. But boy, when you're trying to get it down, I just leave him alone. But he's like, I tried 7 years. I tried to be a good boy, and he was. Most nutritionists would pat him on the back, give him a blue ribbon, tell him he was doing great. Muscular, he exercises, he eats quinoa, he eats brown rice, he eats fruit, he eats beans. They would say, man, you are doing great. He's like, yeah, the problem is I'm getting diabetes. Well, there is a big difference between theory and real life. And as I say so often, this guy can tell you the difference. Mike Demeter can tell you. Theory says this guy should be perfect. Theory says eating the quinoa and the brown rice and the fruit and the beans, and he's muscular, he's fit, he's not overweight. Theory says he ought to be absolutely perfect. But the blood sugar levels tell him a different story. He says it was a path to diabetes. I tried it for 7 years, and I'm sure he was proud of himself. I guess I would be too if I was ignorant and didn't know what's going on. And the thing that people are just shocked by, it's just the shocking truth. Sometimes you see a YouTube video with a thumbnail, the shocking truth about, and then they'll name some actor or actress or some revelation they're bringing. The shocking truth. Let me tell you the shocking truth. Starches, like beans, like whole wheat bread, like brown rice, can raise your blood sugar just about as much as candy bars, cakes, ice cream, pies, and drinking Coca-Cola. Just about as bad. Now, you can say, yeah, but you get a little bit more nutrition. What shall it profit a man or a woman if they get a little extra nutrition and their blood sugars are in the stratosphere and they're killing themselves with high glucose, but they're feeling confident and proud and noble because they're eating whole grains, they're eating quinoa, they're eating fruit and beans, and they're not overweight. There's more to life than just switching over to some of these things, and that is you got to keep those spikes in line. And that's why I always like to emphasize the diet I recommend is a low spike diet. And the only way you'll ever know whether you've got a low spike diet or not is to measure your spikes. Test yourself an hour to an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, depends on when you tend to peak after you have your meal. But test yourself post-meal, post-prandial as they like to say, and find out how your spikes are going. And if your spikes are jumping up to 200 or 185, too high, my friend. And of course, some of you wake up in the morning with 200 plus glucose. So naturally, you're going to spike higher than that. So low spike diet, and you will do yourself a world of good. All right, this individual, this is from a woman who says, I just wanted to say thank you for your videos. Appreciate the thank you. I went to the doctor's for an ear infection. She looked at my chart and said I was due for blood work. So I went in the next morning knowing it wouldn't be good news. Apparently, this lady knew she wasn't eating very well and didn't think she would have good news, and she did not. The doctor said you have an A1C of 9. Your blood sugar fasting was 211. Your thyroid was up. Your cholesterol was up. Your blood pressure was up. Her weight was 229, according to the doctor's scale. So she said she would call in a meter and strips for me, and she wanted to put me on insulin. And told me to test once a day, either an hour or two after meals, and keep a record of that. This lady said no to the insulin. Well, again, I don't like to go against doctors. I'm just reporting what this lady did. She said, no, I'm not going to take the insulin, but I'll take the meter. And so she was going to start testing herself after meals. Now, that doctor did something very smart. She gave her a glucose meter and she told her to test herself after meals. The problem with so many is they'll just do a random fasting glucose once in a while, once or twice a week. They'll test their fasting, and if it's pretty good, they'll be proud, and if it's pretty bad, they'll be depressed, but it doesn't give them any inspiration or knowledge about where do I go from here. It's just either like, well, you're doing okay, or you're doing lousy. But either way, they don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. They don't know what foods are causing this. All they know is it's bad or it's not too bad. So I like fasting glucose tests, and I do them myself frequently. They're kind of a good report card on how I've been doing the last few days, because if you do good for several days, your fasting glucose will tend to drop down. If you do bad, you eat things you shouldn't, or you eat too much or you eat too late, it'll tend to drift up. So I'm not saying fasting glucose tests are not useful. I am saying they're not enough. You have got to start testing yourself after meals. That is, if you will, the Dennis Pollock way to beat diabetes is test yourself after a meal, about an hour to an hour and a half. Probably for most of you, a good place to start would be an hour and 20 minutes. Eat your meal. Take your last bite and then set a timer for an hour and 20 minutes and wait and see. When the timer goes off, test your glucose. Where did this meal take me? And you'll find there is a huge disparity. There's an incredible difference between what meal A does to you and meal B does to you. And that's how I got on board with all of this. I did some reading, but I also started testing my glucose. And when I noticed the huge difference between what a salad, a Cobb salad would do, or what they called a chef salad, versus what a hamburger with a couple of big buns and some chips did. And in those days, I was so ignorant, I didn't even think about the fact that was not going to be very good for me. But when I saw the difference, boy, that did it for me. I was soon testing myself like crazy and learning very quickly which foods worked for me and which ones didn't. So anyway, she said, no, I don't want the insulin. I'll take the meter. And she asked the doctor, could I please have 3 months to reverse this situation? And the doctor was skeptical but allowed it. So she says, I started testing my glucose the next day. Before bed, it was 208. That's pretty high before you even go to bed. That's not your post-meal glucose. You probably had eaten several hours before, but 208. 3 days later, 1 hour after lunch with a salad, it was 176, so that's better. 5 days later after that, 1 hour after eating a hot dog, all beef hot dog, no bun, and a salad, it was 138. So that was her post-meal glucose, 138, which isn't great by someone's standards who's got everything under control. But for her, that was fantastic. That was wonderful. She says, my numbers were going down. Replay. My numbers were going down. Is there anything quite so sweet for a diabetic as to be able to say those words to themselves and to others? My numbers are going down. You talk about motivation. Boy, you get all the motivation in the world when that starts to happen to you. The numbers are going down. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. But she tells some of her adventures with her testing. She says, then I found your YouTube channel and I started following you. Since then, I found certain foods I still cannot eat. Now, listen to this. Half of a medium baked potato, plain, for supper, didn't even put any butter on it, shot my glucose up to 231 an hour after eating half of a baked potato, not a whole baked potato. Some people think, okay, I can't eat a whole, but I can at least eat a half. Half a banana, half a potato, half of this, half of that. I'll at least cut back a bit. Well, I mean, it's better. You're getting half the carbs and half the blood sugar issues to some degree, but she's like, that's still, it brings me up to 231. Half a banana sent my glucose up to 199 when I had it with breakfast an hour after I ate and tested. So she's starting to figure things out. What is she doing? This lady is not a scientist, but she has become a researcher on her own body. She's researching how foods affect her. That's what I became when I started having blood sugar issues. That's what Dr. Bernstein became when he was a type 1 diabetic and he had no idea what to eat, what not to eat, how to get his glucose under control. He became a researcher. Of course, he was an engineer, so he kind of thought like a researcher anyway. He became a researcher on his own body. And as I've said before, I am an expert. I'm not claiming to be a diabetes expert. There are a lot of doctors and nutritionists that know more than I do. But I am an expert on my own body, on how various foods affect Dennis. How am I an expert? Because I have tested and tested and tested and tested and tested. And I've become an expert on Dennis and how foods affect Dennis. And it does change a bit as the years go by, but I just keep on testing. She became a researcher on her own body. She says, I went back for blood work several months later. A1C was 5.8. What incredible progress. I hear this all the time, folks. All the time I hear things like this. And it all usually starts with starting to test your blood sugar. 5.8. My fasting has been down about to 116 milligrams per deciliter, sometimes 106. I've lost 40 pounds. I'm down to 190. My cholesterol is down to the point my doctor said I could cut my pills in half. My thyroid is down. She had thyroid issues. Lowered my dosage. My blood pressure is down. The doctor was amazed at my results. Doctor amazed. How many times have I heard that? My doctor was amazed. Well, I'm getting to the point where I'm not really amazed, but I'm still excited, as you can tell. I still get excited reading these things. I just think it's so wonderful. Because this is not just some words on a page, folks. This is a real living human being. This is a person who's been in the fear of diabetes like most of us have, thinking my life is over and I'm headed for who knows what. And instead, everything's going down. Blood pressure is going down. Thyroid problems are going down. Blood sugar has gone down into the 5s. And she's feeling so much better. What an amazing and wonderful victory. The doctor is amazed. You know, scientists depend on data. If they don't have data, they can't really do anything. And I looked up the idea of data on the internet, and I came up with this quotation from somebody. Data science enables companies, talking about companies, data science enables companies to efficiently understand gigantic data from multiple sources and derive valuable insights to make smarter, data-driven decisions. And I love that last part. They collect data from all kinds of sources, these companies do, and it says it enables them to get valuable insights. Exactly what Mike the Meter will do for you. He will give you valuable insights and enable you to make smarter, data-driven decisions as you become a researcher and a data collector on your own glucose. You'll figure it out. And the good news is you don't have to be brilliant. You don't have to have a college degree. You don't have to be a scientist. Just an ordinary Joe, an ordinary Mary, who's got enough sense to start testing your blood sugar and finding out how various meals work for you. And then you start eliminating the ones that don't work well, and you start leaning hard into the ones that do work well. And early on. I mean, we're talking 20 plus years ago. I ate a chef salad and it barely raised my blood sugar. And guess what? Chef salads have been my friend ever since. And I ate a hamburger and chips with the big buns on the hamburger and all those chips, and it raised it way too high. And guess what? I just don't like buns on my hamburgers anymore, and I don't eat chips at all ever. So data, get some data. Research your own body, your own reaction to various foods, various meals, and even keto stuff. Don't just take it for granted. It says keto on the package. Test it out and see how it works for you. And you will be the better for it. I want to announce an exciting new format that will be added to my Bible teaching channel, which goes by my name, Dennis Pollock. Most of my uploads have been on Mondays, where I post videos that I call Video Devos. These are short talks that focus on one particular Bible topic. And I'll continue to post these Video Devos on Mondays, but now I'm adding a new type of video that will be posted on Thursdays. These will involve Bible studies that Benedict and I will do at our dining room table. We'll be going through various books or sections of the Bible in a relatively short, easy-to-digest, user-friendly format. So catch the Video Devos on Mondays and the Bible studies with Ben and me on Thursdays. I believe you'll be blessed.